So usually a champion is going to have an ideal build, not because other options, or not because it's the best, but just because all other options aren't as good as that build, if that makes sense, right? So before Sterak's was the best second item to build, right? You would have to build Sterak's every single game second, no matter what. You would have to build it. And then some people are going to say, no, but Doaenel, what if you go Frozen Heart? No, fuck your Frozen Heart. Fuck your Frozen Heart, no. Right? Because the problem is if they build, if the enemy gets like a Lord Dom's second item, you just get insta-killed, literally. If they get a Lord Dom's second or third item, you get insta-killed. If the enemy Kiana gets Cyrilda's, you're insta-killed. So it's like, it would be shit. Frozen Heart would be shit. And anybody who tried shilling that shit, fuck them. Because they're spreading misinformation. So essentially, Frozen Heart wasn't a good option. And the only good option was Sterak's, right? As a second item, the only good option was Sterak's. The only good option. And the reason why is simple. Because Sterak's would be an item that you'd build it as a defensive item. And even though you build it as a defensive item, you can still counter every form of damage. Because Sterak's would give you health and a shield. So it's like, okay, I can counter every form of damage. If they have magic damage, that counters it. If they have physical damage, that counters it. That's chill. But see, the thing is, the problem with the Sunderer Sterak's build and the Triforce Sterak's build and all these things is that, yeah, you'd have a lot of HP and sure, you'd have a shield. But what happens if the enemy gets serpents? Then what? Yeah, you're just fucked. If they get serpents, you're just fucked. And not just if they get serpents, you're fucked. It's also the fact that you have no actual real resistances. So in reality, you're really not that tanky at all. And that's why you can get blown the fuck up like that. Sterak's was only a good second item to build if you're insanely far ahead, and then you want to limit test and push your lead because the enemy just isn't strong enough to get their items. That's it. In any game where the games were even or where you were slightly behind, it was a god-awful build because the problem with it is it gets countered way too fucking easily. And if they have any kind of mobility and you're going Conqueror with this shit, well, then you're just fucked regardless, right? Like, you're just fucked. It's as simple as that. And then all these people, they're like, dude, you're trolling. You don't know how to build Hecarim. It's like, no, you don't know how to fucking build Hecarim because you haven't seen all the games I've seen where it's like, once you actually play a lot of Hecarim, you understand that the fucking Sunderer Sterak's build and the Triforce Sterak's build was super fucking bad for actually carrying games. You will understand that. But people who are just like junglers who randomly will pick up the champ will get ahead because they're good junglers. And then it's like, oh yeah, well now I can take over the game. But put yourself in a position where you're behind, the game is unplayable. So, what happened? I said, okay, this build is shit. I need to innovate a new build. I need to go. So then what happens is I sat there and I said, okay, I need to find an actual build. I need to find a build where it's like, this is going to work. Because the problem is, right now, this build isn't good for carrying in high elo. And as a Hecarim 1 trick, it's not good for like 1v9 in games. It just wasn't. So I said, okay, what if I went Chem Tank? So I saw if you go Ingenious Hunter, you can have your tier fully stacked by second item, right? Because people would start running that shit. I don't know who I saw doing it, and I was like, wait, that gives me an idea. If you're to go Chem Tank, you give yourself 30 MR in armor, or something around those lines, right? Which means you're not actually squishy. You give yourself a good amount of health and a good amount of CDR. And then if you add a Manmune on top of that, now since you get your tankiness from your first item, you can commit for full damage, and then you have a build that can just go in, burst one shot, and you're still tanky. And the cool thing about this build as well is that you can go Ionian Boots as an offensive early option because your first item gives you resistances. Whereas with the other build, rushing Ionian Boots into Sunderer and Triforce was always really fucking shit, and I always hated doing it, but it's like you had to do it to keep up tempo with the enemy jungler, but then you would get outscaled by mid-game all the fucking time, okay? So then I was like, okay, let me innovate Chemtank Manmune. And then the Chemtank Manmune build was born. And the reason Chemtank Manmune build was born was because there was no good second item for Hecarim. Like, this is what I'm trying to make you guys understand. The entire reason the build was born was because there was no good second item for Hecarim. Literally, that's the only reason. So, now what Riot did is they changed Death's Dance. They made it so now this item gives you armor as well as making you ignore 35% of the initial damage that you take, magic as well as physical. So what does that mean? That means now we have an item on Hecarim that genuinely makes us tanky as a second item to build. So what that means is that you won't get outscaled in the mid game anymore because you don't have to commit for a Sterak second item. You can go for Triforce into Death's Dance or Sunder into Death's Dance, and then if you go CDR runes, right? If you go offense CDR runes, and then if you also go Transcendence, you're getting the same amount of CDR that you would get from going Ionian Boots, and now you can put that gold towards Ninja Tabby or Merc Treads to make yourself even tankier. So that's why now we're in a very, very interesting situation where there is no build for Hecarim. There's no one size fits all, do this build every game, haha, because now one of the Hecarim skill expressions that there is going to be is knowing when to go which build. So that's why you guys are probably going to see, right? I haven't played Hecarim yet, I don't know yet, but I am almost 100% sure that now what's going to happen with Hecarim is Phase Rush and Conqueror are both going to be options that you can go. Triforce, Sterax, or Triforce, Sunder, and Chemtank are also other mythic options that you can run. And your secondary rune tree will also depend every single game. So that's why you might come here and you might say, okay, Doaenel, what's the new build? Listen, I can't tell you because it will change legitimately every game because now there are multiple different options. Does that make sense? It's like, so now the thing is, I can't just sit here and be like, hey guys, do this build every game, free LP. I can't. So now what makes this fun for you guys, for all you Hecarim mains, all you Hecarim players, is that now itemization becomes a big part of the game. Because the thing is, with stat sites like OPGG, U.GG, all these things that tell you what to build, you have actually been deprived of a big part of the game that was very fun, which is theory crafting what to go, theory crafting which build to go, theory crafting which rune setup to go, right? Because it's already given to you. But now, since I can't give you the build, since it will always depend every game on what your win cons are, on what the enemy champions draft, on the items they're going to build, it's like I can't tell you what it is. So now it's up to you to actually figure it out. Every form of itemization on Hecarim is going to be viable. And now, will that make him strong? No, not really. It won't make him strong. But if you one-trick the champion, like me, and you can look at an enemy team comp and know exactly what rune and build setup you need to 1v9 the game, depending on the circumstance, he will probably be one of the most broken junglers in the hands of a one-trick like me, because now I can open up build diversity. I'm not forced to go the same thing every game, and there's actually like windows of opportunity. So that's the thing. It's like right now there is no build. There is no like, oh, Doaenel do this. No. There's none like that anymore. Because with Death's Dance being changed, Hecarim has a viable second item option. So that's the thing. So now we'll actually get into the Hecarim itemization. So like, what does this patch look like? So for starters, right, there's going to be your runes that you want to go. So the way you're going to build Hecarim from now on is like there are two runes you can go. You either go Phase or you go Conquer. So the way you are going to determine whether it's Phase Rush or Conquer, right, is like you want to look at the enemy jungle matchup. If the enemy jungle matchup is one that's like a pretty close matchup, so think like Diana or think like, I don't know, like Lee Sin or maybe like Kayn, right? Champions like that where it's like a pretty close matchup, then you're always going to want to like switch between either Phase Rush or Conquer. You can do both, right? And the way you're going to decide which ones you're going to do that for is going to depend on like the enemy's team comp. So if they have a lot of, let's say, mobility, then you're going to want Phase Rush so you can stick up to them, right? So it's like mobility. And then Conquer is more so if they're like hard committing for fights and you don't need to actually run them down, then that's when you're going to be going Conquer, okay? So Phase Rush for mobility, Conquer for hard commit. But then you're also going to want to do Phase Rush into jungle matchups where the enemy jungler has a lot of mobility. So imagine they drop something like Kindred or something like Graves or something like just champions like these, right? Where you're going to have to run them down. So Phase Rush is running them down. That's where you need to view it. So when you're in champ select and you're going to be looking at an enemy team comp, phase rush is like, I need to run them down and they're going to be cutting away. Conqueror is like, they're going to stay and fight. So you need to pay attention to the enemy, how they play the game. Are they going to stay and fight, or are they going to just like run away? Are they going to like try to kite, right? And then depending on what it is, you go either phase rush or conquer. So as for phase rush setups, these are what you're going to want to run. This is going to be the with chem tank build. So it's going to be the like standard setup that we've all gotten used to. Standard itemization as well. You're going to be going Onion Boots Rush into like chem tank and then getting Man Immune and then going Death Stance. Death Stance or Serax depending on like where the game is, right? But so it's like the standard build we've gotten used to, right? And then phase rush with Trinity or Sunderer is going to look like this. So it's going to be a bit different. Instead of going Celerity, you're going to want to go Transcendence. And instead of going this offense, you're going to want to go Ability Haste, right? And then as for rune setup, if they have CC, you're going to want to do Triumph with Tenacity. And if they don't have CC, then that's when you're going to want to do Eyeball Collection with Ingenious, okay? So this is the with Trinity or with Sunderer, whichever one, okay? And then you're going to have another option, which is like now your Conqueror pages. So Conqueror pages are going to be like this. If it's super, super heavy CC, like you literally cannot move in team fights, right? This is how you're going to want to have your rune page. So with this rune setup, you're going to have a lot of tenacity through legend, tenacity, unflinching and everything, and that should be really good. And then conditioning is going to help you in the mid game as well, right? Into team comps where it's like they have less CC, but you still want to get Conqueror, then you'd be running this instead. You're going to go Transcendence with Water Walking. If your team has a lot of enchanters, like imagine you have a zillion on your team, then you can actually sacrifice Transcendence for Celerity. But that's only if you have like people who will like boost up your movement speed. So now you might be thinking, okay, that's cool and all, but how do I know when to go which mythic? And mythic choice is going to depend on the game. Like every single game, it should be like a different mythic, more or less. If you're going to be wanting to go Trinity Force, right? The build order you're going to want to get is Triforce into either Merc Treads or Tabbies, and then afterwards getting Death Stance with Man Immune, right? So that way you still one-shot, but you're still like kind of tanky as well, and that should be really good, right? And that's going to be in games where the enemy has a pretty squishy backline, and you need to get on them and insta-kill them. And boot option is going to depend on like what you need that game, right? Trinity is more for like squishier teams, and since it like Trinity also does give you it does give you that like 20 movement speed, right? So if the enemy does have a team that kind of runs away, you can still catch up to them even if you don't have phase rush, since you will be having your like Triforce, right? And stuff like that, like the Triforce stacking MS. And then Sunderer is going to be more for games. How do I explain it? Like Sunderer is going to be more for like those heavy CC games. So like the games where you're going to be running this setup, most of the time you're going to want to run Sunderer, and then this setup, most of the time you're going to want to run Triforce. And all that is like depend on the game. And the way you want to like identify that is just based on like the enemy win cons. So just think about how the enemy wants to play the fight, and depending on how they want to play the fight, that's how you should be itemizing, more or less. So as it stands right now, that's like the Hecarim setup, the Hecarim guide, whatever. And if you're going to want to go for Trinity or Sunderer, what you want to do is you want to go Trinity or Sunderer, whichever mythic you choose, into tier 2 boots, and then get Death Stance after. And I think Death Stance will be like the core second M for Hecarim, even if they are heavy AP. And if they are heavy AP, then you just go Merc Treads into Death Stance. But that should conclude Hecarim itemization for now. If I come to light with any like new broken Hecarim builds, then I'll definitely let you guys know. But so you still want to run Man Immune, so like, since I didn't explain it, it's either Triforce or Sunderer into your tier 2 boots, and then you go Death Stance, and then after that you want to get Man Immune, and then you get like Serax and stuff like that. So it's like a really heavy AD build, but it's still like good for extended fights as well. So that should conclude the Hecarim itemization guide for now. So if any of you found this useful, be sure to leave a like, sub if you haven't already, and I will see you all for the next video. Peace.